Hi, Kirsten back again with another video. I did a video last week on ADD, ADHD, and my two sons, and I wanted to do a follow-up video briefly about how sensory processing disorder is something that my middle child has had to struggle with, or I guess you could say has been gifted with. But before we go any further, please subscribe, like, and I would love comments at the end of this, or questions. So, as we discussed, we know ADD and ADHD, neurological disorders, probably likely linked to stuttering, likely linked to being gifted. There is a strong correlation with all of them. So sensory processing disorder is another one of it's a newer one that's out there, and it has been linked with autism. It has been misdiagnosed as autism. They are not the same thing, but they do show up similarly. So we know with autism, it can show up as social interaction deficits or social awareness cues that are not aligned with what other people may have, so they read people differently or may misread signs and cues. Speech, language could be affected, kind of in their own world in a sense with autism. And then there's also different factors with autism. It's on a spectrum, which means it could be severe, it could be mild. There's just a whole range, and I think almost everything in life is on a spectrum. And so with sensory processing disorder, that is going to have to do with the senses, as it says in the title. Now, the 5 senses that we know of off the top of our head that we deal with most is sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. There's other senses, there's about 4 that we deal with, but the 2 that I'm going to talk about is proprioceptive and vestibulation. And I'm going to mention those because I think with Gabriel specifically, he does, those are challenges or again, gifts that he's had. So proprioceptive has to do with body awareness. So how your joints are moving, your hands, your muscles, your tendons. Spatial awareness, that has to do with being boundaries or physical boundary issues. So, you know, he tends to get this close to you when he's talking, when a lot of people want arm's lengths away. That's what we're used to, and at least in this American culture, that's what's comfortable. He's not aware of those cues, and so he gets all up in your face and shows love that way. And some people get uncomfortable, and some people enjoy it. Now, he's my lovey, so I enjoy it, but we do teach him. A lot of people are comfortable with a little more space. Something else with him that can show up is the hearing. So when he was a baby, for example, if we were outside playing and there was a train track nearby, if a train came by, he would get upset. So what we learned is cover his ears or sing to him or distract him in some way. Well, nowadays, he's older and he's learned how to manage the overstimulation on his own. So he'll cover his ears or he'll sing or whistle or do something. And you'll find as the kids get older that for the most part, and hopefully they will find those cues on their own or find the tools they need to balance themselves out. Or if we instill them in them, they'll start to use them on their own. Another thing for him that's huge is tactile stimulation. I think there's some overstimulation there. So again, it's on a spectrum. He's pretty severe with the tactile, so sometimes he can't wear socks. Most socks he can't wear. And when he was 2 or 3, before he really had full speech, we weren't sure why he was crying with socks. It was like it was physically painful for him. Well, it was. It was very uncomfortable. And so we found socks that worked for him. Or in the summer especially, he doesn't even need to wear socks. He wears a certain type of shoes that is acceptable for school, and he doesn't need socks because he'll walk around barefoot everywhere if you let him. But of course he can't do that. And we've just learned to work with that. It's not an argument. It's not a fight. It's not a battle that we're gonna have an issue with, because we want him to feel comfortable in his own skin, and also that there's nothing wrong if socks are uncomfortable for you. I personally don't like the feel of turtlenecks, and so I've never worn them, and I don't think they personally look good on me, but that's an aside. Okay, so for him, I think he's understimulated with the proprioceptive, with the vestibulation, and I don't know if I mentioned, but vestibulation has to do with balance. So if you're clumsy, that could mean you're overstimulated in that area. If her proprioceptive is understimulated, that could mean you're going to get in somebody's face. So it's like a traffic jam in the brain is how some people will describe SPD. and you're either colliding or crashing into each other, or you're at a standstill or a traffic jam, or you're just sitting there and you're not moving. So it's just not flowing in balance, in harmony with each other. And again, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's not a bad thing if you're aware of it and you find sensory diets, which is a term that they use, to help to regulate that. And so that he can go about his day and function at the highest level that he's capable of, which is a very high level. So if we're in public or in school, he can sometimes wear different wristbands with different textures, so he can pull on it, he can rub it, anything he needs to do to help him calm down or get back in balance. Again, if we're in public at a festival, which we love to go to festivals, and there's loud music, there's a lot of people, there's smells. Festivals and fairs and all that stuff is concerts. You're going to be stimulated with all of your senses in places like that. So he can wear headphones there. And that really helps him, or earmuffs if it's cold enough. And that really helps him to censor out some of the noises that may be unwanted or just a little too much for him. And if you're one of those people that are like, oh yeah, I don't necessarily like tags on my back, or sounds are too much for me, or some smells make me sick, that's actually me. I'm probably on a slight mild level for SPD because my senses can get out of whack pretty easily. Can I still function? Absolutely. Doesn't really affect my functioning, but for Gabriel it has. And I think also linked to that is a brilliance. You know, if you're have kind of more of these traits, you're going to have more traits in other areas. So he's gifted, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, with artistic ability, with creativity, with his imagination. And so I would not change anything about him, because what he's capable of creating is because of everything that he's made up of. It's because that he could be overstimulated and understimulated in these areas. And if he uses the sensory diets and tools appropriately, then he can still function as he needs to, but his creativity won't be dampened. I don't know if he would be as creative and capable of creating everything that he is going to and already is if he didn't have that as a gift. So again, as parents, if you're noticing the trend I'm saying here, we have a lot of impact and influence on how our kids see themselves. The world may say that this is a bad thing, this is going to harm you, this is a disability, but we can say this is a gift. This is something that's going to teach others compassion and understanding and unity. And these gifts make you who you are. Like I said, Gabriel is more artistic because of it. My oldest child, I'm pretty sure, again, he has ADD like his father. They are extraordinarily gifted with problem solving. They can literally figure out anything and everything. I can list dozens of people, celebrities, who have ADD but also are gifted and probably did horribly in school. In fact, they said a lot of them did poorly in school because they don't function in the regular step-by-step world of learning. They function in the global learning sense because there are different ways of learning. But unfortunately in America and a lot of countries, we have a systematic way that punishes some ways of learning and rewards others. And it's a really unilateral and streamlined way. And I'm not going to get into that, but there is just a whole other way. Like Montessori schools are wonderful. My brother and I grew up with them, but that's an aside, so I'm not going to go there too long. But I wanted to say